Right. Well, there's definitely a power vacuum appearing when it comes to the right of centre parties in this country. The Liberal Party has basically left this particular area open for other parties to exploit, parties and individuals, by basically concentrating on rather trivial topics compared to the big issues for cost of living and quality of life. I'm talking specifically about topics such as the same-sex marriage, which they're obsessed with, and of course, latest diversion has been this citizenship debate over who is eligible to actually sit in Parliament. I mean, it's a farcical situation, wasting a lot of time and effort. We have big problems in this country, and all we watch is these clowns in Canberra carry on about their own survival, whether they're able to actually sit in Parliament. I mean, obviously the Constitution needs a major revamp. This is a ridiculous situation. The dual citizenship really shouldn't be such a big issue, but it's basically tying up people in Canberra, and the Turnbull government are a classic at it. They just cannot focus on what's important in this country. They just have a myopic attitude to politics. They love getting into small issues and going crazy over them at the expense of what really matters. Now, in contrast to the way that they're treating things, there's three major figures that are actually giving us an alternative. Of course, the first one comes to mind is Pauline Hanson, who has obviously raised her profile recently and probably regarded she was getting a little bit pushed to the sidelines without having a hot topic to give her prominence in the media. I would say that was the strategy behind doing this media ownership deal, which in a way has some very good points about it. She's got the guts to take on the ABC, whereas Malcolm Turnbull loves the ABC and will not reform it in the slightest. But she is prepared to say that, look, you're going to have to basically be fair and balanced. I don't know how she's expecting to achieve that because, in my opinion, the ABC is an immovable object that needs basic reform. It's the only way that organisation can be improved is to start from the ground up again, and I would make it into an organisation that does investigative journalism, which is sadly lacking in private media. So that would fill a niche that is not being filled by by private enterprise, and that's where government should come in and fill those gaps. But at the moment, it's just trying to duplicate a lot of content, say on the Fairfax media, and that's not what its place should be. So I think it's great that Pauline is making an issue about this, and also like the fact that she's demanding to know how much these presenters are getting paid. Some of these presenters are hardly on air at all and are getting ridiculously fat salaries. This is something you could say for the whole public service. I mean, public service salaries are going through the roof and private enterprise is bleeding. And this is not a situation that is good for the country. So, I think she's onto a winner there. Why shouldn't they publicise their salaries? They are paid by us. We are entitled to know how much these fat cats are getting paid. And it'd be good if a few of them were brought back down to earth. We need to have these people reined in. So I'm totally behind her on that one. But I think her motives for doing this is basically to raise her own political profile. She's still a politician, and that would be what's behind it, in my opinion. Now, the second person I want to give plaudits to, and I've done this before many times, and this is the person I think has got the brightest future of all to take the baton over from the moribund Liberal Party, which just is not representing anybody with conservative or libertarian inclinations, and that is Mark Latham. Mark Latham has continued on his crusade against the leftists taking over institutions in this country, and you can just see it everywhere. They're basically getting in control. So basically, it's totally undemocratic. It doesn't matter who's voted into power. It's basically election-proofing policy because the bureaucrats are always going to lean to the left, and it's a smart policy by the by the ALP and its affiliates to do this, and the Greens, but it's not democratic. And people on the opposite side of the political spectrum need to smarten up and realise that this has been happening for years and to do something about it. And at least Mark Latham is saying it out loud. There are institutions in this country that are being basically railroaded by the left, and the one that comes to mind mainly is in education. That is just ridiculous what's happening in classrooms. And the other person that's taking prominence recently is Dick Smith. And this is another big issue that the Turnbull government and virtually every other party in Parliament is ignoring, and that is the population growth that's taking place in our major population centres of Melbourne and Sydney. It is just ridiculous, the levels of immigration at the moment. This is not leading to an improvement in the quality of life for people there. Anybody who lives in those cities would realise that the transport infrastructure is creaking along, that the congestion on the streets is getting greater, and just basically general quality of life is being degraded. I also think it's absolutely laughable that we've had another one of those reports about the world's most livable cities and made Melbourne #1. But it's certainly a desirable city to live in, but it's getting less desirable by the day, in my opinion. Anyway, so Dick Smith is prepared to actually finally say something about the ridiculous increase in population that's taking place. It wouldn't be so bad if it was more evenly distributed throughout the country, but it isn't. Most of these immigrants are going to Sydney and Melbourne. Those population centres don't need more people. That's the last thing they need. And, the actual productivity per person in Australia is dropping. But the vested interests want more people. Councils want more people because they want more rates. They want higher densities because it means more rates per kilometre. They love it. The big corporates love it too because they want more consumers. They want more people demanding their products. And so they just, the cake gets bigger for them. Of course, it's easy for them to increase their profits because you've got a population increase. But as Dick Smith has pointed out, our population increases are now similar to what happens in the third world. That's the type of demographic that we've got now. I don't think that's something to be cheering about. A smart country doesn't have huge population increases. It works smarter with the people it has, and that's something we need to do. But this is insane. If you seriously are telling me that you believe the big Australia is better for Australia, I think you're out of step with what most people are thinking now, who have to live in these places day to day. I bet you they'll tell you it's getting harder. So that's so it's great that there's some differentiation between political philosophies, but it's not coming from the Turnbull government. They're basically Labor light, just a pale imitation of the Labor Party now. They offer no real alternative. They're a major disappointment. And as I've said, I regard Malcolm Turnbull now as Australia's worst Prime Minister ever. And I think his cabinet is probably the worst cabinet we've ever had. They're just gomeless people without any vision whatsoever, who are wasteful, and they will not take on tough tasks like reforming the bureaucracy in Canberra and elsewhere. It is just pathetic. They are just not doing their jobs, and I think even Bill Shorten might be an improvement on them. That's how bad they've got.